So, can you tell me your name and a bit about your background?
Yeah. So my name is Richard Pendry, and I teach television and radio production at the University of Kent. I am a freelance journalist. I mean, I last film I made was in Kazakhstan for Al Jazeera. I used to go to wars as a reporter, producer, with Frontline News Television, which is my agency that I was a small part of in London. Quite a lot of my colleagues were killed, so a sizable minority of the collective ended up being killed in doing their reporting. I've got children now, so I don't, for a couple of different reasons, I don't want to spend large periods of my life abroad, away from my family, working and doing dangerous things. So I want to be around for my children. So I'm teaching now, and I can talk a bit about my PhD if you like, my research. But what I like about what I do now is that I consider myself a practitioner, and I'm becoming an academic. So I get published in peer-reviewed journals, and but I do it from a practitioner's perspective. So I'm not I'm not a communications theorist. I'm not into journalism studies as such, but my work in my research is informed by my being part of the news industry and understanding as a practitioner how it works and how the relationships that you need to make television programs in not just areas of conflict, but that's part of it.
What made you want to pursue a career in journalism?
The truth is, I graduated with a degree in Russian. I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I got a job on a computer magazine, and I was an editorial assistant, and so I was a kind of humble drone in the office. It was quite kind of fun and interesting, and I saw enough of the way that the magazine was put together that it was just obviously a fun and an interesting way to make a living. And I just kind of took it from there, really. I mean, eventually I did a postgraduate journalism course after a couple of years of the computer magazine, got some training. I was very lucky because I finished my postgrad journalism studies where I had some skills in 1989. So it was the year that the Berlin Wall came down. And suddenly, although I didn't know very much about journalism, I could speak Russian, and I didn't do my final exams because I was already working for the BBC's flagship current affairs program as a freelance contractor. So I went away there with them with a whole group of very brilliant journalists doing a whole load of interesting work in Moscow and it was the 15th Congress of People's Deputies. It was the first time that Russian elections had been opened up to more than one candidate per post, and it was everything was kind of exploding in terms of what was happening everything was exploding in terms of what was happening with civil society. We didn't call it that then, and it was just an amazing time. And there was suddenly a lot of work as the Soviet Union opened up, and I could get work. And then I fell in with a crowd of people, a group of ex-army officers who were Frontline News Television, which was the agency that I ended up working with. And this was actually another revelation, because the technology was getting smaller and the cameras were getting smaller, and these people were going and doing things with these little cameras. That was a really fun way to work, and you could work with somebody. I worked with a couple of very good cameramen, directors, as a producer, speaking Russian, going off to do these amazing stories in this amazing place which was suddenly opening up. And so the technology was incredibly liberating, and it was a nice way to make television programs, because you didn't have to deal with all of the complexities of working within the BBC or a big news organisation with a crew that you hired in. You just went off and did it yourself. So we went off and shot 2 or 3 stories. If they were good, occasionally they made quite a lot of money. Okay. And it was just a great way to work for a while.
And what was your experience like working in Frontline News Television?
Well, as I say, just really fun. I mean, it was. I learned a lot about. So that was news. That was like hard news, and I resisted going to wars with all the rest of them for a long time until the conflict in Chechnya happened in the mid-90s. And then I had no reason not to go because it was my area, and I wanted to go, and I wanted to see what the Russians were doing in Chechnya. So I went with one of the cameramen there, and spent a couple of weeks doing extremely dangerous things, made a ton of money. I understood something about the way that the Soviet state had absolutely no interest in the welfare of their citizens. So I saw for myself the way that the Russian army and the Air Force were bombing and shelling a whole load of mostly old Russian people who hadn't been able to get out of Grozny. And so, tens of thousands of people were being killed in a very small area by the most amazing violence. And the Russian government had no interest at all in protecting their people. And it's something that I should have understood from my knowledge of Soviet culture and Russian life and Russian history and Russian language and everything that I'd done. But to be part of it and see it with my own eyes was an extraordinary experience. So, that was that was something that changed my life. But the other thing was that because I was working as part of a small news gathering group, it was just a very relaxed way to film people and to be with people. So I then went on to make documentaries and kind of observational documentaries, just in a very kind of relaxed style as a director with small cameras, hanging out with people. And it was just a very nice way to work. So that's what I got out of that.
So what type of documentaries have you done?
I've done a whole load of different things, but I had different phases. There was one point where my colleague at Frontline and I went off to do a whole series of films about the ecstasy scene and the dance culture scene, and we did an observational documentary film following characters who were involved there's a policeman and a DJ and a very young guy who was really into ecstasy with his friends, and that was a really interesting thing in the mid-90s to be part of. And we did a whole load of different documentaries, not just about house music and club culture. I spent a year and a half in the city of London filming traders and brokers and hedge fund people. And, these are all worlds which are they're not my world. You dip into it, you get what you get out of it. Sometimes I made some amazing friends who I still see out of all of those films. It's a very compelling way to make a living.
What makes a good journalist?
So what makes a good journalist?
Yes.
Right. So what I tell my applicants when they come to say people that turn up at the university and say they want to study journalism, and I say, well, look, actually, the truth is that there's one thing that I can't teach you, but it's the most important thing. I should say, and it's the most important thing because they're not exclusive. It's just curiosity. I like really nosy people. It's the really nosy, annoying, persistent people who tend to be good journalists. So if you don't mind being a bit annoying to people and you really want to find things out and it really seems to matter, then that's what you need.